Hello everyone, my name is Rohit Raj and welcome back to Deeper Bits. So I have seen actually many people who just run git commands blindly and they always seem very confused, right? So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to break down git commands into two categories which will actually help you to understand what is really happening behind the scenes. So if you ask me, I will basically break down git commands into two categories. So the first is called as git frontend commands, and if you refer official documentation, it is also called as git porcelain commands. And the second category is called as git backend commands, and if you refer official documentation, it is also called as git plumbing commands. So basically frontend and porcelain both are same, and backend and plumbing both are same, right? So what really happens is whenever you run some git frontend command, behind the scene, git runs some backend commands, and these backend commands are actually a lower level of abstraction to achieve the result. So with every frontend command, there is a backend command associated with it. So you'll ask me, right? I mean, Rohit, why we need to study both? Like if we run only front end command, that will be fine, right? So if you really want to understand git internals in depth, and if you really want to understand like what is really happening behind the scenes, you should have an understanding of git front end command, and you should have an understanding like what backend command is running and what it is really doing behind the scenes. So that's why it's very important that you should have an understanding of both git frontend commands as well as git backend commands. So whenever you basically run command like git init, git add, git status, git commit, so all these are basically front-end commands. And whenever you run command like git cat file, git hash object, git read tree, git write tree, so these are basically git backend commands. Now there is one question, right, that is coming in my mind. Do we really use git backend commands in our day-to-day life? So the answer is no. We will only use git frontend commands in our day-to-day life, but as I said earlier, to have a very good understanding, we should understand git backend commands as well, but in our day-to-day life we are not going to use it, right? Now I want to introduce you to a powerful concept, right, before going deep dive in git frontend and backend command. And the concept is called as git lifecycle. Like, have you guys ever heard the term lifecycle? So if you study subjects like computer networks or operating system, or if you study framework like React, so all these have life cycle. So life cycle basically means like from beginning to end, what are the phases or states through which it has gone through. I mean, think about it, like think in a way. Let's say we are human, right? So human also has a life cycle. Like human has a birth life cycle, then the next life cycle they have is basically of childhood, then the next life cycle they have basically of adulthood, and then the next life cycle they have basically of old age, and then they die, right? And in every life cycle they do different kind of work, or they have different roles and responsibilities, right? So why it is necessary to understand the life cycle of a human? Think it like that. Let's say you are at a childhood age, and you will give a job which is done by any adult. Let's say you give a child to do a job of a software engineer or a plumbing job or a carpentry job. It's very hard, right? Let's say someone is at the adulthood age, and you tell that guy like, now you basically fill pictures in the playbook, right? Or fill pictures in the color book, right? And you don't have to do anything, right? You don't have any roles or responsibilities. So that is also very weird, right? So if you really understand, like with any entity, if you really understand the life cycle, you will really understand like why we have to give specific roles and responsibilities at that time only. Like you will really understand the why word, right? So that's why if you really want to understand git in very good depth, you should have an understanding of git lifecycle, so that you'll able to answer the word why, right? So in git lifecycle, what we are going to do is we are going to understand like the life cycle of a file, like how the file is created and through which phases or states it has to go through to basically add in a specific version, right? I mean, what we are doing here in basically Git, we are just adding files in a version, right? So that's the only aim. Like, we will understand the creation of a file and through which phases it has to gone through to get added in the file, to get added in a version, or we can say about to get committed in that version, right? Now, what do you think, like what are basically the states or the phases of a Git? So there are basically four important phases. So the first phase is basically a empty repo or empty directory. Let's say you have empty repo, right? So that is the first phase, right? Now you the first command that you run is called as git init. What it will do is it will actually change the state of that empty repo to a initialized repo, and this state is also called as untracked area, right? So what will happen behind the scene is it actually created a .git directory. Dot means a hidden directory, right? So in that repo itself, it will create a hidden directory which is called as .git, and our repo becomes a Git repo, right? Now you'll ask me a question again, right? Like, Rohit, our repo becomes a Git repo, right? What's the difference? So the difference is basically that repo doesn't have a capability to create versions or track versions. But now this repo, once it is initialized, it has the capability to basically create versions and track versions. And how it got the capability? Through that hidden directory that it got created, that is called a .git. This is basically a very magical directory, and we are going to understand this directory more and more in upcoming lectures, right? Now what you do is, after that, once you have the Git directory or Git repo, you basically created a file. Let's say you created new.txt, right? So yeah, the file got created, and then you have to run a command called as git add file name. So in our case, we have to run is git add new.txt. So what will happen is, now the file will go from untracked area, this initialized repo, or it is also called as untracked area, right? So now from untracked area, it will go to a staging area, right? Now after that, we have one more command which is called as git commit. So what will happen is, now this file is added to a specific version, right? So when you see, basically from the creation of file to get added in a specific versions, we have basically three core states, right? The first state is untracked area, the second state is staging area, and the third state is commit area, right? Now the question is arising in my mind again, right? I mean, why we need this staging area? Why from directly untracked area, why we can't create a file, why we can't add a file in specific version, right? So okay, I wanted to ask you, or let's go with a very fun analogy, right? So let's say you are doing shopping from Amazon, right? And you have lot of items in Amazon that is listed by seller, right? So you are at untracked area, right? So what the next thing you do, right? Let's say you want to buy 5 items. So what you are doing is, you are adding those items in cart, right? Then you go to your cart, and then you decided, okay, I just want to buy these 3 items only, and I will remove these 2 items, right? I don't need it. And then you do a checkout, and basically you buy basically only these 3 items, right? Same case in our Git. We have basically files. Let's say we have 5 files in untracked area. We added all those 5 files in the staging area, but we decided, like, we don't need these 2 files, right? So we remove these 2 files from the staging area, and we just committed the 3 files that are present in our version, right? Now you'll ask me again, like, Rohit, the question arises here is, why we remove those 2 files in the staging area, right? You are thinking about the same thing. Now I will ask you the question, like, why we have removed those 2 items from the cart? The answer is very simple, right? We don't need it. So let's say you have made changes in 5 files, you have added in staging area, but before creating a version, you realized it, like, these 2 changes are really not required. So that's why you removed it, and you basically added basically these three files only. Those two files you don't need in a version, right? So you just removed it. So if you understand the analogy of a cart, like why cart is required while doing shopping, that's the same thing why staging area is required. Because before finalizing something, I want an area where we can do a final check, right? What I really need and what I really don't need, right? So now you have understood about the Git life cycle. But for all my viewers, I really wanted to tell you is, like, this is not the end, right? For every area that we have studied, like from untracked area to staging area, or from staging area to commit area, we are going to understand this in very much detail in upcoming lectures. Like whenever a file goes from basically untracked area to staging area, what really happens, right? Or whenever a file go from staging area to commit area, what really happens? Or whenever a file go from staging area back to untracked area, what really happens? So yeah, there are lots of things that really happens behind the scenes, but I have just given you a surface level idea, like what are the states or phases that is present in Git lifecycle, and why we really need all these states, right? So at last I wanted to give you guys a demo. So let's see through a demo, and our aim through a demo is we will create our first version in Git. So what we are going to do first is, in our demo, first we will create a directory mkdir sample project, right? This will actually create a empty directory, right? Or an empty repo, right? Then we will go inside that directory. So we have basically written a command cd sample project. Cd means change directory to this specific repo or directory. Then uh, let's see. So basically I have run ls-a command, right? So this will basically show all the hidden files as well. Hyphen a means all, right? So there is no hidden file. This is totally empty, right? So if we are realizing it, we are going to run our first command. So what will be the command is, that is basically git init. So now what will happen is, now this empty repo actually is initialized, and now when I'm running this command ls-a, I can basically see a empty I can basically see a hidden directory, and that hidden directory is called as .git, right? So now this repo or this directory, which is sample project, it become a git repo, right? And it has a hidden directory called as .git, which do all the magical things. And now this directory or this repo has the capability to basically create versions, or to roll back from one version to another version, or to delete versions, right? I mean, it has all capability of a version control system. So now we will run a command called as git status. Okay, so this is very important command, right? If you are seeing in my screen, it is saying on branch master. So let's not talk about it yet, right? And it has say no commit yet. So you have remembered, right? I have told you in our previous lecture, the final commit id is actually the single hash that we create for a specific version. So it is saying no commits yet, it means there is no versions present, right? And it is saying there is nothing to commit, create slash copy files and use git add to track. So it is just giving you an idea, like there is no file in this untracked area. So what we will do is, we will basically create a touch new.txt. I mean, I wanted to tell you is, this initialized repo or untracked area both are same, right? So don't get confused. So yeah, so we have basically created a new.txt, and we are doing a echo hello world to git in this new.txt. Now when we run git status command, what will happen is, basically now it is saying, okay fine, you have one file in untracked area. You can see here untracked files, right? New.txt in untracked area. Now what we will do is, we will basically add this file to the staging area, right? So the command is basically git add file name, right? So git add new.txt. So what this will do is this will take the file from untracked area to staging area, right? So now when we see git status, we can see, okay, this file new.txt, and you can see this basically use git remove hyphen hyphen cached file. Okay, let's not talk about this command to unstage. So it is already in staging area and it is giving some command to roll back from the staging area to basically the untracked area. So yeah, we are not currently focusing on this command. So now our second command, that is git add dot, actually worked and it put our file to a staging area. Now to create a version, anyone can guess what will be the command? So basically the command will be git commit, and then we have to give a message like -m flag is for message creating first version of git, right? And yeah, we are able to basically create our first version. And now when I'm running git status, it is actually showing on branch master nothing to commit, right? And there is one more command that I really wanted to show you is git log command. So whenever you type git log command, it will show all the versions that is present. So basically when you see git log command, it is actually giving you a commit and then there is a hash. So this is basically the single hash, and I am the author and this is my message, and this is basically our first version, right? So we have actually seen our demo and we are able to successfully create our first version in Git, right? And now in our next videos, what we are going to do it is we are going to understand the state in very much detail, and whenever you are doing a transition from one state or phase, you can say from one state to another state, what is really happening behind the scenes, right? And at last, I just wanted to summarize all the things that we have studied. So basically, we have studied that Git has basically front-end commands and Git has some back-end commands, and in our day-to-day life, we will only use front-end commands. And the second thing we have studied is Git lifecycle. So basically, it has 4 life cycle where three are core life cycles, or 3 are core states, you can say. So the first is from sample repo, or from basically from a simple repo, you create a initialized repo that will basically you run a command that is .git command, and it just creates a .git directory and it will give the capability of your repo to create versions, right? Now there are very 3 important transitions or states, and these 3 states are basically the core states of Git lifecycle. So the first core state is basically a untracked area, right? Or initialized repo slash untracked area. Now the second core state is basically the staging area, and the third core state is basically the commit area, right? Now at last, I wanted to tell to all my viewers is, if you are really liking my video, you can subscribe to my channel and you can follow me on Insta and Twitter for more updates. Thanks a lot. Thanks again.